Welcome back to Beyond All Reason. It is Jaws Munch here, and today we're going to be talking about unit compositions. I've had a lot of requests about videos like this in the past, so I figured it would be a good opportunity for me to go over some of the basic unit compositions that you will likely see in Beyond All Reason. Now, before we get too invested in unit compositions, I think it's important that we talk about what are unit compositions, and it all starts at your basic lab. A unit composition would be a repeat command cycle of units. Now, the repeat command on a factory will basically just let you build a certain quantity of units cycling over and over again. So, for instance, a composition that would be common would be, say, 3 pawns, 2 rocket bots, and 1 Lazarus. That would be considered a composition. We have 3 different units all compiled together, and they all have different purposes for why they are being built. Another unit composition would be maybe 2 Centurion, 1 Resbot, and then a couple pawns. That would be another unit composition, or you could even mix in some rocket bots. So the composition can get more complex or simpler based on your strategy you're trying to use with your certain composition. Now, I'm just going to go over a couple basic compositions that are most commonly used in Beyond All Reason and talk about them. So first off, we have the 2 rocket bot, 3 pawn, and 1 Resbot composition. Now, pawns are what you would call a fast infantry bot, a raiding unit, a raiding style unit. So the speed is pretty good for the pawn. It's one of the faster units in the game. It has a very rapid fire, but a relatively short range. It's very similar to the Blitz in how you would want to use it, and it's quite effective for indirect attacks. It can be used in a couple different ways, but largely indirect attacks are where it's going to shine. So say you have a front line here that your opponent is pushing towards you and you're holding the line here, and you don't want to attack directly in the front line, so you will take your pawns and move off to the other side and try to sneak up behind, getting around defenses. This is a great way to catch your enemy off guard. It's not always going to be an option, but it's good to have them available for this. Now, another thing that pawns are commonly used for is attacking units that cannot deal with high quantities of units. For instance, a rocket bot alone is not going to be able to handle a pawn alone, because the rocket bot is not very good at targeting, and their missile takes quite a bit of time to actually travel. So you can actually burst down rocket bots that are left out in the open pretty easily and be able to wipe them out. All right, so those are kind of 2 styles that you can use the pawn for, and they combine very well with the rocket bot. So we have ourselves a couple walls here, so we won't likely be able to target the ground from this distance. We can maybe target up here, but we can shoot over the walls and also be able to burst down any incoming opponents. And we are abusing the range of the rocket bot, which is quite large, and then abusing the speed of the pawn. So this composition works really great at just slowly building up units and pushing kind of like a slower over time aggression in T1, because these rocket bots will be able to take out static defense, light laser turrets relatively easily. It can even take out beamer turrets and Overwatch turrets relatively well if you have enough of them. And then your Resbot or Lazarus will be here to repair any units that take damage, largely the rocket bots, because they have a little bit more health pool than the pawns, which only have a health pool of 370. So you'll be able to repair any damage to your rocket bots and kind of poke in, then poke out, and repair in, and then out, repair, that type of a strategy. And dwindle down your opponent and have them scrambling, trying to be able to evade the rockets. Then when they get weak enough or the static defenses are destroyed enough, you could push in your pawns and, you know, do a larger amount of damage with those guys as well. So it's pretty good at holding the line, and it's a pretty standard build and composition. Next up, we're going to take a look at a common vehicle lab composition here, and that would be with the two blitzes, one stout, one Janus, and then one shell shocker. So we have our long range artillery, we have high damage, like, you know, rapid damage and able to kind of poke out and reload. And then we have our heavier armor, or more health essentially. And then we have our raiding units as well. So we have a good mix here of range, damage, and health pool with a little bit of raid. So these guys are, you would want to build these on repeat essentially. And that will just crank out every cycle one more stout, one more Janus, two more blitz tanks, and one more shell shocker. So you'll be cycling through at a much, you know, a slower pace, building up different quantities of units over time. Now, you won't really want to use the blitzes as a main engagement. You're going to want to mainly work with these three units. So you're going to want your Janus, stout to be towards the front, really just trying their best to take any damage and absorb any poke that comes. And then you're going to want your shell shocker to abuse the longer range here to blast away any defenses and poke away at your opponents. Now, it has a decent amount of blast radius as well, so you can do a good amount of AoE to your opponents if they're leaving units clustered. And over time, you're going to eventually scale up a really large quantity of these shell shockers and be able to do a lot of damage to your opponent where they constantly feel they have to fall back and retreat. Where the blitzes come in handy is either if you make an aggressive play or find an opening to raid them and try to hit their economy, or if they push onto you and are trying to aggress on all of your artillery units, you have backup of blitzes that are able to go in, absorb the hits, and do a lot of damage very accurately at close range. So this is a good buffer to have them in your composition. So once again, damage, health, raiding opportunities, and protection for close range combat, and then long range poke, okay? That's a really good composition for vehicles. Now, moving on to T2 bots for Armada. So this is one of my favorite compositions, but it is a little bit pricey. So the total cost of all these units is going to be 3,000 metal, 3,500 metal, but 50,000 energy. So you're not really going to want to use this composition unless you have a fusion reactor already built, a minimum of one fusion reactor to be able to get this composition working properly. But this is a very powerful composition, especially if you're dealing with just like a really tight situation where you need to push your opponent back and they're aggressing on you with a bunch of hounds or Sheldon, just kind of some of those earlier T2 units. This will work relatively well. So you're going to want to get one Fat Boy, which is an artillery. Think of it kind of like a mammoth, but it's a long range artillery that does massive area of effect damage, and it does a very large burst shot. So let's check this out. It does a 800 damage burst. So if you have a cluster of pawns, wiped completely. If you have a cluster of hounds, they're going to almost be destroyed. They'll be very close to dead. If you have a cluster of Sheldon, they will be destroyed instantly. And it's in a very large area that this will be happening. So it's very good for those earlier kind of artillery piling that people tend to do towards the mid game. Okay, another element is we have our radar bot, the compass, and our smuggler, the radar jammer. So this is going to obfuscate the radar signatures because let's face it, the Fat Boy does not have a very long-ranged attack. It's honestly quite a short range compared to other artillery pieces. I think the Hound can almost outrange the Fat Boy, and the Sheldon can definitely outrange it. So you want to be cautious because of that, and the best way to counter it is honestly with the Smuggler with a radar jamming. That way that radar signature does not get brought up on the map, and they won't be able to use quite as long of range. Now, we have the compass as well, and this extends our vision to be a little bit beyond the actual damage radius of our Fat Boy, but that's still okay, you know, it's close to it. And then the biggest weakness to the Fat Boy is spam. So lots of pawns, lots of ticks or grunts, whatever it may be, they can pretty easily run up to the Fat Boy. And if the Fat Boy is targeting something around here, it's not great for anyone involved, right? You're going to be blasting your own units. So these shock bots have a lightning attack that will disperse between several different units, kind of like the lightning tower that we talked about previously. So that will be able to, you know, chain react to any tick spam or pawn spam, and your Fat Boy will still be able to largely target units out beyond its range, while your shock bots are eliminating any spam that's rushing and trying to attack your Fat Boy. All right, so compass for obfuscation of radar signatures to basically limit the range of your opponent. Compass to, sorry, I think I said compass, but smuggler for that. And then compass to extend your vision so that you can maximize the range of your Fat Boy. And you can leave this cycled if you have enough economy. You can leave this cycled, one Fat Boy, one smuggler, one compass, and like 6 or 7 welders. That works out great. You can even mix in a couple gunslingers. They'll do kind of similarly with a little bit extended range, so that could be nice as well. They're just a bit more expensive. So that's an excellent composition. I definitely recommend for T2 bots. And lastly, we're going to be talking about T2 vehicle compositions. This is the bread and butter, in my opinion. It's a very similar concept to the one we talked about previously with T2 bots, but this is for vehicles with the Mauser. These are fantastic units, decently long-range artillery. I believe they just barely are less, or I think they might barely outrange the Hound just a bit, but they have a very large area of effect. So if you want to attack something, like if you could just honestly do a click and drag about this far apart, and everything in that area will be destroyed. Like anything that walks in front will be just eliminated there. Super, super strong units with a very decent area of damage. It's not quite as large as the Fat Boy, but they are a little bit faster as well. The Fat Boy greatest weakness is honestly how slow it is, whereas these guys can move quite rapidly if they are facing forward. When you start to turn them, they end up going quite a bit slower, but then gain speed once again after they are fully rotated. So we have here the Prophet, which is the radar vehicle for Armada, and then we have the Umbrella, which is the radar jamming vehicle for Armada, and then we have lightning tanks. The lightning tanks are once again to shut down spam. That's very important with almost every artillery unit in Beyond All Reason. They are generally quite weak to spam. They will start, you know, targeting stuff closer and closer, and, you know, start damaging your own units. As you can see, that does quite a massive amount of self-harm there. So these lightning tanks are going to be great for shutting down any spam that comes into contact, while also zoning away your opponent as they have a decent amount of range. I highly recommend building these very early into T2 if you get the chance. They are not nearly as expensive as the Fat Boy composition, as they only cost 29,000 energy, which is affordable if you scaled your energy economy enough in early T1. So you should be able to afford pumping out a couple of these, and you only need like 6 to really impact the map in a great way. If you get 6 of these and just get a couple lightning tanks to back them up, you'll be in a fantastic position to shut down any T1 that is out there, blow up defenses, push all the way to your opponent's economy and shred them. You could potentially wipe out a base if you are, smart with how you move and have a decent scale and opportunity for it. But yeah, excellent composition here. Highly recommend it. And if you guys enjoy videos like this and you want to see another composition video where I'll go over, some other compositions that are common out there, please leave a like on the video. And also, we'll say if we get to 50 emojis once again in the comment section, I will make a video going over more compositions, and we'll probably add some T3 compositions as well. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you guys on the battlefield.